The rain fell in heavy sheets, washing the blood from the broken streets of Caldera Prime. Smoke coiled from the wreckage of a downed skyship, its hull still smoldering, flickering with the last dying embers of plasma fire. Elias Vance wiped rainwater from his eyes with a bloodied sleeve, his chest heaving beneath his battered combat armor. The fight had been short but brutal, another skirmish in a war that had stretched across the stars for decades. He didn't care about the war. He never had. He was a smuggler, a scavenger, a man who lived on the fringes of collapsing empires. But when the fighting spilled into Caldera's lower districts, he'd found himself dragged into the chaos. He almost turned back when he heard the voice. A small, frail sound cutting through the storm. "Help me." Elias found her half buried under twisted metal, her face smeared with ash, eyes wide with fear. She couldn't have been more than 16. Gaunt, fragile, her hands trembling as she reached for him. "Hold still," he muttered, prying away the wreckage. His fingers burned as he tossed aside a searing hot shard of starship plating. "You shouldn't even be alive under this." Her breathing was shallow, her pulse weak, but her eyes, an unnatural shade of violet, glowed with a dim but persistent light. Elias knew better than to ask questions. People with eyes like that belonged to the royal bloodlines of the Helisian Ascendancy, the ruling dynasty of the galaxy, a family that had been torn apart, hunted down after the last of the Starborn kings was executed. He should have left her, walked away. He could already feel the weight of trouble pressing down on him, but he didn't. Instead, he carried her through the wreckage, slipping through abandoned alleys and burning corridors until he reached his ship, the Black Runner, a rusted, half-functional freighter barely held together by scavenged parts, but it flew. That was all that mattered. The girl, Mira, barely spoke as he treated her wounds. She just stared out the viewport as the ship lifted off, watching the burning city shrink into the distance. It wasn't until they hit low orbit that she finally turned to him, her voice soft but steady. "You shouldn't have saved me," she said. Elias frowned, fastening a bandage around her arm. "Yeah, I'm starting to figure that out." She blinked, her violet eyes glowing a little brighter. "They'll come for me." "Who?" Elias asked, though he already suspected the answer. She hesitated. "The Imperium. And the Architects. Maybe both." Elias leaned back in his chair, rubbing a hand over his face. The Imperium were the remnants of the old Ascendancy, ruthless warlords clinging to scraps of their former glory. The Architects were worse, alien machines, cold and relentless, who had spent centuries tearing down human civilization piece by piece. "What the hell did you do?" he muttered. Mira pressed her hand to her chest, where faint, swirling patterns of light pulsed beneath her skin. "They think I'm the last." Her voice cracked. "The last of the Starborn line." Elias froze. His stomach twisted. If she was telling the truth, she wasn't just a lost royal. She was the rightful heir to the Helisian throne, the one person who could unite the scattered human colonies and turn the tide of the war. "You can't be serious," he whispered. She looked at him, her eyes unwavering. "I didn't want this, but I can end the war." A warning siren blared. Elias jumped to his feet, cursing as he checked the ship's sensors. 3 blips on the radar, closing fast. Hunter ships. They'd already found her. Elias gritted his teeth, slamming his hand against the controls. The Black Runner roared to life, engines screaming as he threw the ship into a sharp turn, ducking low into Caldera's stormy atmosphere to try and lose their pursuers. "I should have left you there," he growled, steering wildly as plasma bolts sizzled past the hull. "I know," Mira said quietly, gripping the armrests of her seat as the ship rocked. Elias didn't understand it. Why he hadn't left her to die. Why he was risking his life for a girl who might bring an entire armada crashing down on his head. But somewhere, buried beneath his frustration, he felt something he hadn't in years. Hope. He clenched the controls tighter, jaw set. "If you really want to end the war," he muttered, "then hang on." The ship surged forward, engines blazing, cutting through the storm and into the unknown. The Black Runner bucked violently as another plasma blast grazed its hull. Elias gritted his teeth, forcing the ship into a barrel roll as he dove deeper into Caldera's storm clouds. The thick, swirling vapor distorted enemy targeting systems, but it wouldn't hide them for long. Mira clung to her seat, her violet eyes locked onto the flashing red lights of the cockpit controls. They're not going to stop. Elias snorted. Yeah, thanks for the update, Princess. He slammed a switch, redirecting power to the rear shields. You said you could end the war. Mind telling me how before we get blown out of the sky? Mira hesitated, then touched the glowing sigils on her arm. The light intensified, pulsing in sync with her heartbeat. I don't just claim to be Starborn. I am Starborn. Elias rolled his eyes. Yeah, I got that part. No, you don't. Her voice was urgent now. They wiped out my family because they were afraid of what we could do. My bloodline was engineered centuries ago, genetically modified to interface with the Crown engines. Elias blinked. The Crown engines. A myth. A legend. The supposed god machines that powered the Helisian Ascendancy's rule for thousands of years, vast, celestial constructs capable of reshaping entire planets. No one had seen them in centuries. Some believed they had never existed at all. You're telling me, Elias said slowly, that you can control them? Mira nodded. But I need to reach one first. And the closest one is on. The ship lurched as an impact rocked the hull. Elias cursed. The hunter ships had locked on. Forget the history lesson, he growled. If we don't shake these bastards, we're not making it anywhere. Mira exhaled sharply, her fingers tightening around the armrest. Then she closed her eyes. The glow beneath her skin spread, flowing like molten gold through her veins. The ship's console flickered. The engine screamed. And suddenly, the Blackrunner moved. Elias felt the ship respond, not to his commands, but to something else. It twisted impossibly fast, slipping through the storm like a living thing, dodging plasma fire with inhuman precision. The hunter ships tried to adjust, but they were too slow. The Blackrunner whipped around, surging behind them in an instant. Elias barely had time to react before his targeting systems lit up. I've got them, Mira whispered. Elias didn't question it. He pulled the trigger. Twin bursts of plasma erupted from the ship's cannons, spearing through the enemy vessels in a flash of fire and debris. And just like that, they were alone. Elias exhaled, his pulse still racing as he turned to Mira. Okay, you're going to explain exactly what just happened. Mira opened her eyes, the glow slowly fading. She looked exhausted. I told you, she murmured. I can connect to the Crown engines. But they were built with a failsafe. Starborn blood can interface with any system created by the Ascendancy. Even a ship. Elias ran a hand down his face. You possessed my damn ship? I guided it. Sure. That makes me feel a whole lot better. Mira sat back, her expression troubled. I didn't know I could still do that. I thought the connection was lost when the Imperium destroyed the last Crown engine. Elias exhaled, gripping the controls. He didn't like where this was going. But if I can still connect, Mira continued, that means at least one of them is still active. Elias groaned. So let me guess. We need to find it before the Imperium or the architects do? Mira gave him a weak smile. You're catching on. Elias slumped back in his chair. He had saved a girl who could reshape the galaxy, a girl who had just turned his life into a suicide mission. He let out a long breath. All right, princess. He flipped a switch, setting coordinates for deep space. Let's go find your damn Crown engine. And with that, the Blackrunner vanished into the stars. The Blackrunner shuddered as it breached Caldera's upper atmosphere, the last wisps of storm clouds peeling away to reveal the endless void of space. Elias glanced at the console, still running hotter than he liked after Myra's little stunt, but stable for now. Mira sat quietly beside him, staring at the swirling mass of distant stars, her violet eyes flickering with something unreadable. Elias drummed his fingers against the control panel. All right, princess. Spill it. Where's this miracle machine of yours? Mira took a slow breath. There's only one place it could be. She tapped a sequence into the star map, and the display flickered before zooming in on a remote sector at the very edge of known space. A cold, dark place even smugglers like Elias avoided. Ruins Verge. Elias felt a pit form in his stomach. Oh, hell no. Mira turned to him, frowning. You know it? Elias scoffed. Everybody knows it. Nobody's stupid enough to go there. Ships disappear, whole fleets even. It's cursed. It's not cursed. Myra's voice was calm but firm. It's protected. Elias narrowed his eyes. By what? The last crown engine? Silence. Elias leaned back, rubbing a hand over his face. You're saying the reason no one comes back from Ruin's Verge is because some ancient superweapon is still functioning out there? Mira nodded. It was designed to keep outsiders away. Only a Starborn can approach it safely. Elias sighed, staring at the coordinates. Of course. Because this wasn't already a bad idea. He exhaled. Fine. But if we die, I want it on record that I told you this was the dumbest plan ever. Mira smirked. Duly noted. Elias shook his head and punched in the jump sequence. The ship vibrated as the hyperdrive spooled up, stars stretching into brilliant streaks of light. And then, with a final boom, they were gone. The transition out of hyperspace was violent. The Blackrunner lurched as though it had struck an invisible wall, sending alarms shrieking through the cockpit. Elias grabbed the controls, cursing. What the hell? Then he saw it. A massive structure loomed ahead, half hidden in the shifting clouds of a nebula. It was larger than any station Elias had ever seen. An immense ring-like construct spinning in perfect silence. Ancient, monolithic. The last crown engine. Mira sucked in a breath. It's still here. Elias barely heard her. His eyes were locked on the other thing in the distance. A fleet. Sleek, angular warships, their hulls reflecting the nebula's eerie glow. The Imperium had beaten them there. Elias' hands tightened on the controls. Princess? You might want to start talking real fast. Myra's expression darkened. We have to get to the core before they do. She turned to him, urgency in her voice. The engine can rewrite the balance of the entire war. If they seize control, they won't. Elias set his jaw, flipping the ship into a sharp dive, weaving through the debris of long-dead vessels. The Imperium's ships were already moving, their thrusters burning bright as they closed in on the station. We need a way in, he said. Myra's eyes fluttered shut, and for a moment, Elias felt the ship tremble beneath him. The controls flickered. There, she whispered. A massive gateway on the ring's surface shimmered, revealing an entry point just large enough for the Blackrunner to slip through. Elias didn't hesitate. The ship roared forward, streaking past the first wave of Imperium scouts. The race was on, and the fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. The Blackrunner shot toward the massive gate, its engines roaring as Elias weaved through the debris of ancient warships. The Imperium's fighters weren't far behind. Sleek, black-hulled vessels darting through space like hungry predators. Plasma fire streaked past the viewport, forcing Elias into a sharp roll to evade. Mira clutched the armrests, her violet eyes glowing faintly. We need to move faster. Elias barked a laugh, slamming the throttle forward. Oh, really? I was thinking of taking a scenic route. A warning klaxon blared. Lock-on detected. Elias' fingers flew over the controls, deploying countermeasures. A cluster of decoy drones scattered behind them, erupting into flares of electromagnetic interference. Two of the Imperium's fighters veered off course, their targeting systems scrambled, but the third adjusted, closing in fast. Myra's hands twitched, the ship shuddered again, and Elias swore as the controls resisted him for a split second. Princess, I don't need you flying through me. Hold steady, Mira interrupted. Her voice had an eerie calm to it. Elias gritted his teeth. Not exactly my strong suit right now. The enemy fighter locked on. Just as it unleashed a burst of plasma fire, the Blackrunner twisted, on its own, as if it had a mind of its own. The energy blasts missed by inches. Elias barely had time to react before a pulse of raw energy surged from the station below. A blinding arc of blue light speared through the enemy fighter, tearing it apart in a silent explosion. Elias blinked. What the hell was that? Myra's breathing was shaky. The engine knows I'm here. It's responding. Elias stole a glance at her. The glow beneath her skin was stronger now, the pattern shifting like living circuitry. She wasn't just using the crown engine. She was connected to it. The gate loomed ahead. The Imperium's capital ships were closing in, their massive turrets locking onto the station. Elias didn't wait to see what they'd do next. He angled the Black Runner downward, diving toward the opening just as the gate pulsed with golden light. And then they were inside. Darkness swallowed them whole. For a moment, there was nothing. Then, slowly, dim lights flickered to life, illuminating a vast corridor stretching endlessly into the depths of the station. The walls were lined with alien script, Helisian glyphs, long thought lost to time. Elias exhaled. "All right, princess. We made it." Mira unstrapped herself, stepping forward. "Not yet." Elias followed her gaze. At the far end of the corridor, a massive door pulsed with energy. A throne-like console sat before it, wires and conduits spiraling outward like the roots of a tree. The core. Mira took a deep breath. This is where it happens. Before Elias could stop her, she stepped forward. The glyphs on the walls flared to life. The entire station rumbled, as if awakening from a centuries-long slumber. And then a voice, ancient, resonant, filled the chamber. "Heir of the Starborn, you have returned." Mira lifted her chin. "And I claim the engine." The door slowly began to open. Elias felt the hairs on his neck rise. "Princess, I've got a real bad feeling about this." Before he could finish, the chamber was bathed in crimson light. Alarm screamed. The station trembled. And then, from the shadows beyond the opening door, something moved. Not a machine. Not a soldier. Something ancient. Something that had been waiting. The last defense of the crown engine had awakened, and it was not pleased. The chamber trembled as the darkness beyond the massive doors gave way to something. Someone. A figure emerged, its form shifting like liquid metal, its silhouette humanoid but wrong, as if sculpted by hands that had never truly understood flesh. Its eyes were pits of cold white fire, and its voice was like the echo of a dying sun. "You are not the one who was meant to return." Mira stood her ground, though Elias could see the tension in her shoulders. The glow beneath her skin pulsed like a heartbeat, growing brighter as she took a step forward. "I am the last of the Starborn," she declared, "the last heir to the Helisian ascendancy. And I claim the crown engine." The figure tilted its head, considering her. "The bloodline persists yet diluted. Unworthy." Elias tightened his grip on his blaster. "Well, that's rude." Mira clenched her fists. "You don't get to decide that. The engine belongs to humanity. We need it." The figure raised a hand, and suddenly, Mira gasped, her knees buckling as a wave of unseen force pressed down on her. The symbols on the walls flared violently. Elias lunged forward, but before he could reach her, a pulse of energy blasted him backward. He hit the ground hard, his blaster skidding out of reach. The Guardian loomed over Mira. "Need does not make you worthy. The engine exists beyond war, beyond kings and queens. It will not serve another tyrant." Mira gritted her teeth, struggling against the pressure. "I don't want to be a tyrant," she gasped. "I want to stop this war. Humanity is being hunted, enslaved, erased. If we don't take back control, there won't be anything left to rule." The figure hesitated. For the first time, it seemed uncertain. Elias, still groggy from the blast, dragged himself up. "She's telling the truth," he said. "The Imperium's outside right now, ready to take this place for themselves. If she doesn't claim the engine, they will, and I'm guessing they won't be as noble about it." The Guardian turned its burning gaze on Elias. "And you? You are no Starborn. Why do you stand with her?" Elias dusted himself off and shot Mira a look. "Believe me, I've been asking myself the same question." Then his face hardened. "But I know what she's fighting for. And I know she's willing to die for it." Silence. The Guardian considered them both. Then, slowly, it stepped aside. The chamber's energy shifted. The oppressive weight lifted from Myra's shoulders, and the final set of doors groaned open, revealing the heart of the crown engine. A throne-like interface stood in the center of the chamber, surrounded by a swirling sphere of golden energy. Mira hesitated only a moment before stepping forward. The moment she placed her hands on the console, the station came alive. Lights flared. The walls pulsed with power. Outside, The entire ring structure began shifting, energy rippling outward like a star awakening from slumber. Myra's eyes glowed so brightly they were almost blinding. She gasped as the connection fully formed, her mind flooding with knowledge, memories, the voice of the engine itself. The Starborn has returned. The Crown engine is yours. The Imperium's fleet outside must have sensed it too. Their ships adjusted course, weapons powering up, ready to destroy the station if they couldn't take it. Elias grabbed the comms. Mira? We've got incoming. Myra's hands clenched around the console. I see them. She didn't just see them. She felt everything. Every ship in orbit. Every fighter. Every pulse of energy running through the engine's ancient veins. The Imperium fired the first shot. A massive plasma lance streaked toward the station. Mira raised a single hand. The plasma bolt froze mid-space, crackling with unnatural energy before reversing course, hurtling back toward the flagship that had fired it. The warship barely had time to react before it was engulfed in its own blast, tearing apart in a fiery explosion. Elias whistled. Okay, that's new. Myra's voice was distant, layered with something more than human. The Crown engine will not be taken. The Imperium fleet scrambled, trying to flee, but the station's defenses had already activated. Beams of pure energy lanced outward, cutting through the fleet like paper. The remaining ships turned tail, retreating into hyperspace. And just like that, the battle was over. The war, however, was just beginning. Mira released the console, stumbling back, the glow in her veins dimming slightly. Elias caught her before she could collapse. She looked up at him, exhaustion in her gaze. It's done. Elias exhaled. For now. Mira gave a tired smile. We changed everything today. Elias smirked. Yeah, I'm sure the galaxy will send us a nice thank you note. She chuckled, but her expression turned serious. We need to move. The architects will come next. And we need to be ready. Elias nodded, already dreading whatever insanity lay ahead. But for the first time in a long while, he felt something strange. Hope. He glanced at Mira. So what now, Your Majesty? Mira tilted her head, a playful glint in her eyes. Now. She smiled. We build a kingdom. And as the Crown engine pulsed with power, reshaping the battlefield around them, Elias had the distinct feeling that he'd just helped forge the beginning of an empire. One that would change the stars forever.